Hi friends, welcome back. And if you're new here, my name is Susie Cambick. I'm a life coach who loves cooking, and so everything that we do on this channel is related to cooking or coaching. And so today I have a little bit of a different type of video to share with you. I had a conversation with Kathy Neubauer this morning. She is a business partner of mine, and together we own a company called Lifting You Up. And we focus in that company on helping other people with personal growth related items, focusing specifically on connection and communication. And so during our conversation this morning, we spent some time talking about Thanksgiving and what it's like going into a Thanksgiving holiday with perhaps some anxiety around getting together with family members who maybe we haven't seen in a while, or being around family where the dynamics might be a little bit sticky. And so we wanted to share these with you so that you have some really good tips on how you can navigate Thanksgiving and maintain peace and harmony. And the three key things that we talk about is really making sure that you are aware, that you care, and that you prepare. And so I hope you find this video insightful and that it helps to make your holiday get together more peaceful and harmonious. And with that, we'll get into it. But I wish you all a very, very happy Thanksgiving. I am so grateful for all of you for watching my videos and for supporting me on this journey. And I'm just so full of gratefulness going into Thanksgiving, and I wish you and your family the happiest Thanksgiving yet. And with that, here we go. Enjoy. Hey Kathy, how you doing today?
Hey, Susie, I'm doing well. Thank you. It's a nice sunny day and I'm getting ready for the holidays.
That's right. I know, as am I. We're changing things up this year. I usually do all the cooking, and because it's my favorite holiday to host. I love cooking, and but we're actually going somewhere else this year. So that'll be interesting. I think we're ready for a little bit of change in dynamic in our family, so we're looking forward to that. But as always, there's a little bit of anxiety that comes along with the holiday season for many people. I think that me particularly and my family, we have some history of things not going very well for the holidays, and so there's some things that I'm doing personally to kind of prepare for the holiday season. And I wanted to get your ideas around what you thought, what you're doing to prepare, or what you've experienced with working with clients and so forth that could be helpful for people going into this Thanksgiving this week.
Yeah, I think we're doing it differently this year too. My daughter and her husband are hosting Thanksgiving for the first time. So I'm sure they're having some anxiety around that as well. But hosting probably is one of the hardest things to do because you want it to be so perfect and you want everybody to have a good time and you want everything to be done at the same time. And I know when I used to host, that was the biggest thing. My kids would call me psycho at that time, because I would want everything to be so perfect. And they're like, oh my gosh, mom, it's just family. But I think the biggest thing that I see and that I try to help my clients with, because I hear a lot of this happening for people where they're going into the family, is some they haven't seen for a while, some that they're uncomfortable with or make them feel a certain way, or Sometimes they just feel like they don't fit in or they're not good enough, or they start the comparison thing going between families. And I think that it all boils down to getting anxious. And the biggest thing that somebody can do if they struggle with that anxiousness is to create an awareness. And you can prepare for that before you even get to where you're going, right? If you start to think about before you even arrive, what thoughts are going through your head, or last time you were together with the family, what happened that made you feel anxious or feel like you weren't included, and write that stuff down. If you can jot some of that stuff down and who they were and how you felt and all of that, you'll begin to realize that number one, you get physical symptoms, right? There's a physical sign that happens within your body when you begin feeling it. And also what happens then is your thoughts start going haywire, right? It starts to
Mm-hmm.
go into all the what ifs or the stories you're telling yourself. And the more that you can write that down before you go from a past experience, the more you can begin to prepare for that experience coming up, because it's really what's happening in you. It's not so much about the people that are going around that. It's not so much about the people that you're seeing. It's about the energy and the way you're receiving the people that you're meeting.
Yeah.
Does
Yeah. I love
that
that.
make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I've had to do that for the last several holidays, just preparing for the unknowns and not knowing what, what people were gonna, what mood they were gonna be in, how everybody was gonna gel together at the holiday season. And so, yeah, it is super helpful to be aware of myself going into it, both from the perspective of, how do I want to show up, and how do I, uh, what dynamic do I play? What role do I play in the overall dynamic? And making sure that I am aware of that,
Yeah.
and yeah, what those historical triggers have been when somebody has said something that struck a nerve, and
Yeah.
just be aware that those things are going to happen. And I have control over how I handle those situations.
Absolutely. Because we can prepare ourselves for that, right? We can begin to understand what we're going through. So many times we don't take the time to really unpack what's happening with us. We kind of outwardly feel like people are doing things to us, but our thoughts are getting jumbled in our heads. So when we can get it written down, then we can make that decision of how do I want to show up?
Mm-hmm.
How do I
Mm-hmm.
want to how do I want to handle this? Because there are plenty of ways that we can prepare ourselves to feel good and enjoy our holidays. And the one thing that we have to do is be careful with our expectations. So even though I'm talking a little bit about preparing for it, don't tie an expectation to how it's going to be received, because we can't control that,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we can prepare ourselves for how we want to show up and how we want to be, and we have to be open to receive however it is received,
Yeah.
right? It's
I,
not our fault. It's not our right or wrong way of doing things. It just is how it happens.
Yeah, I love that. I think that that is such a key point of awareness. Just to be aware that you can, you may be the type of person that puts expectations on yourself and others. And just being self-aware of that alone, and, making sure that you're not doing that,
Mhm.
or what or being aware of what causes you to do that, right? I think the other big thing here in awareness is, we all have made up stories about what has gone on in our lives and what those things mean,
Right.
and so we develop these belief systems around particular people, or around, who we are in life, or who somebody else is in life, you know.
Right.
And if we, you know, are taking the time to do some self-examination of, you know, um, who am I around this person and what beliefs do I hold
Yeah.
around that, then, you know, that in and of itself is big, because you can really question yourself and
Yeah.
question motives in those situations. You know,
Absolutely.
if I have this core belief that, um, to, you know, I'm making something up here, but like to my cousin, right? I'm never good enough. You know, it's, you know, there's nothing I can ever say or do is good enough, because we're in this pattern of every time I talk about something, she one-ups me,
Mm,
or, you know, she is constantly playing devil's advocate, right? So now I
right.
have this thought in my head that I'm never good enough in her eyes, right? And
Right.
so, you know, I've made up a story. You know,
Right.
I've not really ever talked with her about that, and whether that is really true, or become curious about, what is really going on there, right? I've just
Yeah.
made this whole story up. You know, I'm not
Yeah.
doing this like crazy. I'm doing this
Right.
like, you
Right.
know,
Like
like
the
you
routine of
just,
storytelling. Yeah.
yeah, you just, do
Yeah.
that. And so, you know, it's really important to be aware that you do that. We all do it. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything bad about you, but just being aware that that happens, and
Yeah.
then questioning whether that's really accurate or not.
Yeah. Because when we make up those stories, we can believe them as facts. We
Hmm.
can believe them as truths. And a lot of times, if we're being totally honest with ourselves, we may have an inner belief about ourselves that we're constantly trying to prove ourselves, that we're constantly feeling like we don't measure up or we're not enough. And that belief is looking for validation. And we can find those negative validations in the least little thing. If somebody didn't say hello with a big greeting, if they didn't hug us, if they didn't look us in the eye, like we can find evidence of the negative so easily. What I'd like to talk about a little bit is how do we shift that to not be searching for the evidence of how bad they are to us or how bad they make us feel, but rather look for evidence of the good in them, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Shift it to caring,
Yeah, I,
right?
I love that. I love that, and I definitely want to go there. But let me just say one other thing that I think is super important about, um, self-awareness, or awareness in general, right? Is that, you know, you and I have done years and years and years of studying, different profiles, different personality types, different styles in, you know, in filters that we put on, different styles and wounds that we've taken, that we've created, or that have been impressed upon us throughout life. And we don't have enough time to get into all of that. But I guess the other thing that I will just mention is that it's important to understand that, and I know this seems so obvious, people are different from you. You
Right.
know, they're, you know, in just the disc profile, you know, alone, you know, there's four core styles: a dominant style, an influencing style, a steady style, and a, um, contemplating style, right? And so, but of those four, there are like 41 different versions or something
Right.
like that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, there are, just to kind of give an overview, the top two, you know, or the, you know, in the disc, it's a circle. So the two that are above midline are more
Mhm.
of the extroverted styles. So, these are somebody, you know, the D style is somebody that is very assertive and can come across as very forceful. They can be strong-willed. They can be very much about winning,
More
and,
direct in their words. Yeah.
you know, results driven. You know, whereas, the I is also a very extroverted style, but they tend to be a little bit more, on the excited side, and they're the ones that kind of are like, oh, let's have fun. It's all about fun.
Uh,
Let's,
Louder. Yeah, they can be louder, and yeah, their energy goes up with their excitement. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, just being aware that those two extroverted styles, exist, and they're, um, and then there's the S and the C, which come below the middle line and in the chart, and those are more of the introverted styles. Okay. And so, though the steadiness, the loyalty, the, slow to make change of the S style, can be somebody that you're interacting with. And so you kind of have to be aware that they may be a little bit more introverted and they're not motivated by, um, you know, ex, people and a lot of commotion, right? They prefer calm and steady, and they're very warm and caring, and they want to interact with people, but have a hard time sometimes meeting that energy level that a D or an I can bring.
Well, and that
And then
energy level can drain them, right? The
absolutely,
high energy level, by the end of the day, you see the dynamics changing because the more introverted styles are losing energy, right? And
yeah.
the more aggressive styles are gaining energy because they're stoked by people, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the S's, and the C's may be, wanting to find the door
Right,
earlier
right.
than some of the other people.
Or
And
find private space, like trying to get away for a minute,
right.
especially if there's kids around, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of commotion with kids. It doesn't necessarily have to be adults. Kids make a lot of commotion that's also very draining. And just speaking of kids for a second, and I don't know, were you done with the
No, I
person
was just
breakdown?
just the C really quickly, so the other style is the C. They're very cautious. They're very data driven. They're introverted, but they want facts and data. They don't make decisions through emotions. They and they so you'll find somebody with this style wanting to have a conversation from a very statistical and logical
Yeah.
point of view.
And
Um,
they are observing a lot.
yes, definitely. And so, yeah, so I guess just my point here, and like I said, we don't have time to get into all of it, but my point here is to just be aware that there are these four core styles, and then there's multiple variations and combinations of those styles, right? So you may be um, you may be encountering any of these different dynamics at your Thanksgiving holiday, and just be aware, kind of observe yourself, who am I kind of talking to here, and recognize that they just may not have the same point of view as you, and that's fine. That's how they're wired.
Yeah.
They're not being difficult, they're just being different because
Right.
that's who they are at their core. So it's just, yeah, important
Yeah.
for you to keep that in mind as well. And go ahead, you were going to say something about kids.
Well, yeah, I was just going to kind of tie that into the different parenting styles based on some of the disc as well, because you'll see that more of the D or the C style are very direct in their parenting style, and the I and the S are more emotional with their parenting style, or maybe even softer with their parenting style. And so if there's a lot of kids around, sometimes you may judge how the parents are parenting them, and you may want things a certain way, or you may expect them to behave differently, or you may think that the parent sounds very harsh, or whatever it is. But a lot of times those are based on some of the styles as well. um I mean, there's obviously other reasons, and there's parenting patterns that families can agree to, so it may not always be that way, but there's a tendency, the automatic tendency of how you speak when you're frustrated with your child or something is more direct. If you're more on that DC style, right? It's more a matter of fact, right? It's not cuddling and honey, what's wrong? And like, it's not so much that stuff. And so that can be that could cause conflict if you're somebody sitting there observing, or somebody judging it, or a different generation, right? If you're a grandparent and you're watching that, you feel a certain way. If you're a parent, you understand a little bit more the stage that family is in. So there's all these elements that are happening in this kind of, I don't want to call it chaos, it's just really commotion, right? It's a gathering. So there's going to be commotion. There's going to be a lot people clanking cups and cooking while people are playing games. There's just a lot of different conversations going on. And that builds up a certain energy. But if you make yourself present and make yourself aware of what's really going on, you can almost look at it in sections and say, wow, this is life, right? This is just life. And we're sharing it with our family, how grateful we can be to be sharing it with our family, right? And so
Absolutely.
as we go into that, we start to be able to look a little bit different about how we're going to care for our family. And all I can control is myself. All you can control is yourself. So how you show up, if you start to view them through the eyes of love, and you may have obnoxious Uncle Eddie, right? You may have this obnoxious person or somebody that kind of just rubs you wrong, but you can look at him and think about his life. What is his life? What style is he? What is he trying to share? Is he trying to connect? Like, you can look at him so differently that this judgment that you're feeling about him or people like him, you can dissipate that. Because let me tell you, judgment is only painful for the person who's judging. The other people that they're judging don't even know you're doing it, right? So it's an irritant that's staying in you. So it's putting a little poison in you as you're doing it, and it's not healthy, right? And as a matter of fact, if you're judging someone else for something, chances are that's something you judge yourself for or have in the past, right? And so that is an awareness worth recognizing, because when we're so harsh on ourselves, we tend to be very harsh on other people. And I think the biggest thing you can do is recognize that you don't deserve that harshness, nor do they, right?
Yeah.
So begin to care for yourself and care for other people in a kind and loving way, because it makes you happier.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think another key thing that you're alluding to is, have empathy for
Yeah.
the people that are showing up as well. Um, a lot has happened this year.
Yeah.
And, there are people showing up to these gatherings that have lost important people in their lives,
Right. Oh, yeah.
that are still, revel, you know, reveling about things that have happened over the past year that are very challenging for them. Maybe they're not in a great financial position. Maybe they're currently estranged from somebody else in their life that means a lot to them, right? Like, life is happening all around all of us all the time, and you never quite know what somebody is walking with in their life. There could be all kinds of stuff going on. Another big thing that is um, dividing people right now is the results of the election. I mean, I've heard numerous stories about people not even willing to get together with their family for the holidays because of differing political views. And, everybody is certainly entitled to their own feelings around it.
Yeah.
Um, and you can coexist in the same space if you have an understanding of, you know, um, where they may be coming from, or just make decisions about what kind of topics are off limits, to talk about. And so that's where, you can have a caring and understanding attitude towards the fact that their views differ and that, they may be having their own feelings about that and
Yeah,
being empathetic to, we've all had things not go our way in
right,
life in some way, shape, or form, right? Um, and just being empathetic to the fact that that's what's happened to some people that you know and love,
yeah,
as a result of some of these things that have been happening in the world, right?
yeah,
And everybody has very strong opinions about those things, and you can respect that and care for them as a person that they may be hurting, and just
right.
come at it from the perspective of having empathy because you know what it's like to have
Hmm.
something not go your way in life and feel very devastated or about it or what have you, right? So yeah, I think that that's very important.
Yeah.
Go in
I
with
think
that
you
caring attitude.
absolutely. I think the other thing is change, right? You mentioned that you're doing something different this year. We're doing something different this year. I think, the older you are, the more traditions that you may have created in your life, whether it's from your family growing up or whether it's from the family that you created. And now you're going into the next generation in some cases. And to be able to be open to traditions changing, right? Not every generation carries the same traditions. Not every household carries the same traditions. They may change the food that is being served. They may change the games. They may change this or that. And it's okay, right? It's
Mhm.
okay. We can get stuck in our consistent patterns and expectations, but it's okay for it to be different. It might be even more fun, right?
Yeah.
It might
Yeah.
be
If
even
you
better.
learn, yeah, if you learn to let go of, that particular picture of what things are supposed to look like in your head and go with the flow, you may find that it was better than you ever expected. And, there's good in everything. And so just going in it with the perspective of how can I turn this into a win
Yeah,
when I feel like it's changing and different and I may be apprehensive about that, right?
yeah,
Yeah, because some people have very, very strong attachments to traditions,
yeah,
and life changes. There could be very, very logical reasons for why things just have to be different this year.
right,
Maybe mom has always hosted and now she's getting up there in age and can't
right,
do it anymore. Or maybe, Aunt Betty is burnt out.
yes,
Like maybe there's something going on in her life and
yeah,
she just can't this year,
yeah,
it's easy to say, but we've always done it that way and now everything's ruined. But is it
right,
really?
right,
Check yourself on that belief because at the end of the day and at the end of people's lives, there are a lot of studies about what happens at the what people feel like they
right,
regret or what they wished they had more of when or had done more of when they when they were younger is just
yeah,
all we want is love and connection and time with our family, and that does not need to look this way, right? It can look so many different
right.
ways and you can be content with that. So,
Right. And that's why we go into the gratitude, right? Be
yeah.
grateful that people showed up, be grateful that people got together because so many families have no one to share the holiday with. And be okay if you get invited to do something and you get to have a choice of where you want to go. And don't be offended if somebody comes to your house and not theirs or theirs and not yours. It just is. They have to make choices. It's not about liking somebody more or anything like that. It's just how life goes on as families expand. Those things are going to happen, but we can be grateful for who is in our presence at the time,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's the most important thing. I think being able to plan, and I'm not sure, before I go into how I think people can plan, I think a good thing to always keep in the front of your mind is to be curious, right? Be curious what's going on in somebody's life. Be happy for them if they have new homes or different things that they have achieved in their life. Be happy,
Mhm.
celebrate. It's so funny how families are more competitive than encouraging. Like a lot of times you have to go to your friends for encouragement rather than your family, because families have jealousy for whatever reason. Maybe growing up they had a lot of comparisons, I don't know, but I don't think it is a comparison. Some people will live more minimalistic, some people will live more grand. That's a choice, and it's their choice to make. So be happy for them and whatever they do. If they're healthy, that's amazing, right? If they're having children, it's amazing. But we can't put our belief systems on other people. We have to appreciate them for who they are, where they are, and what they're doing, right?
Mhm.
Now, I'm not
Yeah.
saying we have to condone, alcoholism or drug addicts or any of that stuff. We
Correct.
don't have to agree,
Mhm.
but we can also have a kind heart, that doesn't make them feel like they are just losers,
Yeah.
right? We
Yeah.
don't have to make them feel like they're beneath us. We can choose to separate ourselves from different people, but sometimes I just read a story on Facebook the other day about a homeless man who, a girl, and this is a little off topic, but I just think it was perfect timing for this little video. This girl was being pressured by her parents because she was in her 30s and she wasn't married. And she would get so frustrated because they wanted grandchildren and they didn't want her to be a spinster and all this stuff. And so she found, I don't know if you've seen this one, but she found a homeless man and asked him to marry her out of convenience. I will give
Mm.
you shelter. I will give you food. I will take care of the house for you. But this is out of convenience, so my parents get off my back. So he agreed, and he came in, and they introduced the parents. They ended up getting married, the whole plan. And then one day she came home and she got something she didn't expect. She said she walked in the door and the house was spotless and there was a meal ready, and this homeless man was all cleaned up, clean shaven, and he said, "I just want to do something kind for you. I used to be a sous chef,
Mm.
and I just want to give back to you because you've saved me."
Oh, I love that.
And we just don't know the story,
Mhm.
right? We don't
Yeah.
know what somebody else's experience or what they're going through, but one little lift up can change everything. And the end of that story was, maybe this isn't going to be a marriage out of convenience. Maybe this will be more.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And I think that's just a beautiful thing to remember, is that everybody does have their own struggle. Some people don't show it. Some people wear it on their sleeves. Some people do things to cope with it. Some
Mhm.
people shop to cope with
Yeah.
it. Some people drink, do drugs, whatever it is. But there's always a story that's real to them. Whether we
Yeah.
believe it's true or not, it's real to them.
Yeah, I love that. And what it reminds me of is the importance of active listening.
Yeah.
You know, like we can go into a situation and have our own agenda. Like, oh, I want to talk about this. I want to tell people about this that's going on in my life, and or I want to vent and complain about this, and that's fine. Um, and at the same time, you want to show up as the person that cares and actively listens to what's going on in other people's lives, and not try to push your own agenda on what's happening, right? And that doesn't mean you push your own needs and wants to the side,
Yeah.
but striking up the right balance of that. You know,
exactly.
a key to connection and close relationships is being able to share the love on both sides, right? Have the balance of, what's happening in your world, and you know, I really want to know about it.
Right.
Not as a pleasantry, not as, like, I genuinely care about what's going on in your life, and I want to share my life with you.
Yeah.
And that can just, if you go in with that,
Yeah.
with that attitude of wanting to actively listen, the odds of your holiday going better than expected are much, much higher.
Yeah. So what do we do to start to prepare ourselves for some of that?
Yeah.
I think that's the key. Like if you had, if you wanted to be curious with somebody and you wanted to get to know them better, create a couple questions that you can use as your go-to questions, right? To start the conversation and make it a question that requires engagement, not just a yes or no, because when they say yes or no, then you don't know where to go from there.
Yeah. Like, what was the best thing that has happened to you so far this year,
Yeah,
and why? What made it the best
yeah,
thing?
yeah,
Something that has substance to it, so that
right.
you're setting up for a story to be told, and so that you can find ways to connect with that particular story.
Yeah. And if they say, I don't know, say, well, what if you did know? Just think a minute. Just reflect a little bit of this year. Like we're almost to the end of the year. I'm sure something good has happened,
Hmm.
right? And if they can only think of negative things, try to find the silver lining in what they do share, right? Maybe they got sick, but they found medication that's working. Or, we can always try to find the good in the bad, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe they learned something from something that was really hard to handle, or maybe they drew closer to God for something that was going on. But I think the big thing too is just be able to prepare yourself. And if you are a person that needs to regain energy, know what it is for you. If it's breathing or a 5-second meditation or something, go in the bathroom, give yourself 5 minutes to take in some deep breaths and fill your cup again, or go for a little walk, or, go out and watch the kids and veg out for a minute, or whatever it is for you, but recognize it. Because remember, I said it starts with a physical reaction,
Hmm.
right? It either is something like, your hands are sweaty, or your heart is racing, or you got gurgles in your stomach, or, there's usually a physical reaction that you can start to identify and say, oh, I feel that coming on. I'm going to stop that before it happens, right?
Right.
I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm with family. I'm in a good space, right? Like tell your, whatever it is for you, because each person's going to be very unique. But just remind yourself, because if you don't, you'll start to get more physical symptoms. Your thoughts will start to take crazy road, right?
Hmm.
It's going to go into a jumbled mess of overwhelm, because your thoughts are going to start colliding. And if you've gotten to the point where your thoughts are colliding already, find a space where you can just unpack your thoughts. Say, what am I
Hmm.
thinking? Separate them, because when you can piece them out, they're not all fighting with each other. Those thoughts don't fight with each other. So start to unpack it a little for yourself, so that you can realize that this is happening to you. Nobody's doing it to you. It is happening within you. And I'm not saying anxiety is not a real condition. I believe it is. But there are some things that we can do to try to help ourselves relax.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it's easy, right? And some people have extreme anxiety, and I don't discredit that. I'm just saying there are sometimes there's tools that we can do to make it not so hard.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely anxiety, and then there's definitely, a lot of people are challenged with, like, emotional dysregulation, right? Like, the what happens when a button is pushed, a trigger is flipped, right?
Yeah,
And not knowing, not having enough experience with stopping that, and the volcano erupts before
Right.
you even realize it, right? So
Yeah.
I love that tip of um, recognizing what those triggers are, and who typically flips
Yeah.
them for you. You know, that just like we talked about earlier in the conversation, um, planning and being aware of what those things are for you, so that when they start to happen, like, oh, I'm prepared for this. I knew
Yeah.
this was going to
Right.
happen, and
Right.
I have a plan for what I'm going to do when it does happen, right? And
Yeah.
so that's where, I think we start to get into the topic around boundaries. And you were
Yeah.
kind of alluding to, some of the things that you can do to take yourself out of the situation. Like, Thanksgiving is a holiday where, it's all around the food.
Right.
So, so it's very easily explainable that I'm going to go take a quick walk around the block
Right.
because, like, I ate too
Way
much,
too
or
much.
I
Yeah.
know I'm going to eat too much, right?
Or
And
I'm making room for dessert. Right.
exactly, right? So, um, it's a good excuse, and
Right.
physical activity is a really good way to take you out of that fight, flight, freeze, or fawn
Right.
response that happens as a result of being triggered, and allows you to kind of shift back to your frontal lobe where logical thinking and less emotional reaction occurs, right? And so that, is a very key,
Yeah.
important piece.
And I think believe in yourself, right? Believe in yourself and who you are, because if you have self-doubt, those are the things you're going to look to validate, right? Start to believe, prepare yourself. I'm going to have an amazing Thanksgiving. It's going to be, but don't make it an expectation, right? An amazing Thanksgiving means I have less anxiety. It means I've talked to a few more people. What is that? What would you consider a successful Thanksgiving to be,
Hmm.
right? There wasn't a fight. Nobody argued, right? I felt comfortable. Like, what would be a good Thanksgiving for you, Susie?
Hmm. Oh, you know what? I would love to answer that. Let me say one other thing though that you just sparked in my mind. Um, Also keep in mind that it's not your responsibility to make everyone else happy,
Yeah.
right? Um, so kind of making sure that you're walking in with this prepared mentality of, I'm going to have a good Thanksgiving. Here's what it's going to look like for me.
Mhm.
And if other people are not showing up that way, or that I don't it doesn't need to be my job to try to make it better for them.
Right.
It's not selfish to focus on keeping yourself where you want to be, and let other people own their own challenges around the
Right.
situation, right?
Yeah.
um so that I just wanted to say that really quickly. But as far as I'm concerned, a happy Thanksgiving for me is definitely something that is filled with peace, um, harmony. Those things are very, very important to me. So I know going in that I have a set of rules that I'm going to abide by, to make sure that I can make that as possible. So that I can create the environment for that,
Right. Right.
around me. So I know going into Thanksgiving that there's some political differences, um, with the people that are going to be at the Thanksgiving holiday, and so that's an off topic. That's an off bounds. What am I trying to say?
You set a boundary not to talk about it. Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah, it's an out of bounds topic that,
Right.
so
Right.
we will not discuss it, right? And so if it comes up, I can say something like, um, I I would love to have this conversation with you, but today is not the day. I want to make sure that I have a, peaceful and
Yeah.
calm holiday. And I suspect that, you know, I can even blame it on myself, right? I don't trust that I'm not going to get heated about
Right.
this topic, right?
Right.
Because it
Right.
is emotionally charging.
Right.
But I would love to have this conversation with you. Let's schedule something for, next
Yeah.
week or something like that. Or maybe you don't even want to do that. No is a complete sentence, right?
Right.
You
Right.
could say no thank you, and
Right. Right.
just move on. I could uh to the dynamic that's going to be at my Thanksgiving, I know, like, based on previous experiences, all kinds of topics come up. I can choose to walk away if something is being discussed that I don't, want to participate in. I don't have to try to control the situation and
Right.
shut it down. I can do that when I'm directly being spoken to and there's something that's off limits. But if people are just having a conversation over here that I'm not really a part of, and they're talking about something that is, is causing that volcano to
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
erupting, I don't have to
Yeah.
engage. I can choose to walk away. And so those are some of the things that I'm preparing myself for the holidays. Yeah. So anything
One of
else
the
from
things
your perspective?
One of the things that I'm doing for myself is I'm making stuffing for the first time this year. I've never made it before. And one of the things that used to be a thing for me years ago was if I tried something new that I brought to a dinner. My
Mhm.
brother often has some holidays where I bring food, right? And if nobody eats it, then I used to feel really bad, like it must have been terrible. But all I'm doing this year, all I'm doing this year is saying, hey, I was assigned stuffing. I've never made it before, and it is what it is, right? It's an attempt. And so
Right.
if it's not eaten, it's not eaten. I did what I thought I could. And so I'm not going to place any judgment on myself or anyone else for anything like that. And when I used to host, it was like the whole big thing. If one thing didn't get touched, it was like, oh my gosh, but why? Why do I do that to myself? Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let myself and everyone off the hook for that kind of thing. But I think the other thing is um to know that we don't have to always step in. Like if we're observing something, and maybe there's other people there that are going to talk about politics or are going to talk about stuff. And if you have the more aggressive personalities, it is going to get louder. But sometimes we can assume that it's fighting when
Mm-hmm.
it's just conversation of two aggressive styles,
Mm-hmm.
right? So some people will jump in to stop the fighting. And sometimes if we just let it be their own thing, then it doesn't progress. But if one jumps in, then another jumps in, then another jumps in, and before you know it, we have this chaos going on and we don't know how to stop it. So I think that's one thing that and we don't often have that by our house. We do have aggressive personalities in our family for sure, but we don't normally have we can see like my sister and my son can really get into a debate about politics, but she says it's for fun. Now she's a passive personality and he's a more aggressive style, but it gets louder and louder and louder and louder, and they're having fun. But the other people start getting anxious and anxious and anxious, right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but when you understand that, the only reason we understand that is because we had the conversation,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know,
And then
we
you can
made an
choose.
assumption before, right?
And then you can choose, like, if you know you can make a choice of how to handle that situation. Like, you can
Yeah,
ask, you can say, hey, can you, can you just tone it down a little bit?
right,
Like, your heightened voices are making me anxious, right? That's a reasonable request. They can say
right.
no, but it's a
Yeah,
reasonable request. You can also choose to, eliminate yourself from the situation. Again, walk into another room, go for a walk.
yeah,
But hey, I need to wrap up because I have another meeting that I need to get to. But I have so much enjoyed this conversation with you.
yeah. It's
And
fun.
I guess the last tip that I will give here is remember what this holiday is all about. It's
Yeah.
about being thankful, it's about being grateful. And
Yeah.
you and I and everybody listening to this have an opportunity to make it so. Find things to be grateful for, find things to be thankful for, and don't forget to tell the people that you're with how you feel,
I
um,
believe that.
how
Yes.
what you're grateful for, and what this means to you. And
Yeah.
so, with that, Kathy, I wish you and your family a very very happy Thanksgiving, and I love you.
Same to you, Susie. Love you, and I am grateful to be working with you.
You
Have a
too.
wonderful weekend.
Thank you. You
All
too,
right.
Kathy. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it valuable. Thanks so much.